Good evening from Raleigh, North Carolina, and welcome to another tropical update video. Today is Friday, September the 7th, 2018, and the current time is 8:41 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Remember to make all decisions solely based on National Hurricane Center forecast and only look to your local National Weather Service office or perhaps local news media for official, accurate, and timely information. So the top news story is obviously Florence, as you've probably heard, and let's take a look at, what's going on with the storm, where it's expected to go, and, what that means for us here in North Carolina and also along the East Coast. And also look at, how active the tropics are. We have several areas that we're monitoring here. I'll whip my pin out here, and this is Florence, looking a little disorganized. We'll take a closer look at that in just a few minutes here. Here is Tropical Depression 9 and Tropical Depression 8. It's a little counterintuitive because you'd think it'd be 8 and 9, but this actually got its act together before this one, so it was designated the Tropical Depression name 8 before this one was. These would become Tropical Storm Helene and Tropical Storm Isaac, whichever one forms first. There's a small area that the National Hurricane Center is monitoring here that's ahead of Florence, and here is Bermuda right here for reference. It has a very low chance of developing into anything, but it still warrants watching because it is September and it's peak time for anything to develop, and it's over very warm water, so anything could spin up. And also, you can't really pick it out here, but there is some energy down here, kind of a disturbance that will kind of wiggle its way up into the Gulf and could possibly spin up into something later into next week. But all of that aside, the main story that we are worried about right now is Tropical Storm Florence and its future, especially the next 6 to 7 days, and how it will impact everything. So zooming in on Hurricane Florence, and actually before we do that, I wanted to point out I'm active on Twitter, and I saw a tweet that really just kind of resonated with me. I wanted to share it with you. It comes from a very respected colleague, maybe not colleague. It comes from a very respected forecaster that I follow on Twitter who works at the National Hurricane Center down in Miami, Florida. And I've redacted their name and also, other things below the tweet for privacy, but it just resonated with me. It said, whatever happens with Florence and the rest of the tropical season, know that there's an incredible network of people that have dedicated their careers to serving the best interest of their publics. Remaining calm while taking the threat seriously is the best thing you can do. And that's a real tweet from a real person, and I just really appreciated that because it gets lost in all of this every once in a while. You see all these models being thrown everywhere, and you might think the meteorologists or forecasters have no idea what they're doing. They're just posting models everywhere, but these are real people who are dedicating their time and their energy to protecting other people and making sure they're weather aware and prepared. So just remember that, through all of this, no matter what happens with this storm or with the rest of the season, these people are dedicating their careers and their time and energy, devoting it to keeping you safe, keeping me safe, keeping everyone safe, regardless of, status or anything. It's their job to keep people safe, no matter where they are or who they are. And that's, it's just a pretty profound thing. It's an unforgiving science. Meteorology is, if you get it wrong, you could put people in harm's way. So just, there are people who dedicate their time and energy to this. So it's important to remember that, this is their job. And the best in the world are right here down in Miami, Florida, tracking these storms for us and helping, throughout the hurricane season. So besides that, let's zoom in on Florence and see what's going on. And it looks pretty unhealthy. It's a tropical storm right now, which is good news and bad news. It's good news intensity-wise because it's a weaker storm. However, it is bad news because weaker storms tend to not gain a lot of latitude. What I mean by that is that if you have a stronger storm, it's going to kind of want to lift itself up this way due to kind of intrinsic or hidden mechanics in the atmosphere that you can't really see. I've learned this in some of my meteorology classes. The storm automatically wants to propagate northwestward due to the rotation of the Earth. But when you have a weaker storm, it more wants to take, just a westerly track. It's not going to kind of pull itself up. So if Florence was stronger right now, it would be kind of moseying off this way, wiggling off this way. But the problem is that since it's weaker, it's kind of going right along this latitude line of 25 degrees north. And the longer it stays on that westward track, the deeper it'll dig underneath the ridge that I'll show you in a little bit, or I'll talk about in a little bit. And the more westerly it goes, the more southerly and westerly it is, the greater risk it poses to the United States because of digging kind of underneath that upper air pattern. So it's weaker. That's great because it's a weaker storm, but it also means that it's kind of drifting westward more, which is not good news. And you notice it kind of looks really disorganized. It doesn't look that impressive. It's a tropical storm right now, maximum sustained winds of 65 miles per hour. And you can think of a hurricane kind of as a big circulation, sort of like this. And I'm going to draw a little diagram here while you watch the, well, I've messed up my arrows, but you get the idea, sort of. I hope you get the idea. So this would be the eye wall. So all of the air is being pulled up into the ocean and into the eye wall. And as it's being pulled up, lifting more air causes condensation, causes thunderstorms. And in the eye, you have kind of a rotation of air going up, and then out at the top of the storm, it diverges out and creates these wispy cirrus clouds you see here. So I'm going to kind of redraw this a little simplified, just the eye portion. And tropical cyclones love to be stacked like this so they can effectively pull that air in and then send it right back out. And they love to do that. And the more clear and vertically stacked, as we call it, they are, the more vertically aligned they are, it's very easy for the storm to pull that, deep ocean heat content and pull it up and turn it into something useful for the storm, and helps it like excel and accelerate and propel itself. But what's happening with Florence right now is that it's experiencing wind shear. So I've lost my pin here. You can kind of think of the circulation kind of being stacked. There's a lot of wind coming from, this direction, and what's happening kind of tilts the storm so it can't really effectively, it kind of bounces around and can't pull that air up so easily. It can't pull it, it wants to go straight up, but it just kind of becomes a mess in here. Just like my drawing is just kind of a mess. It looks like that inside the storm. There's a lot of turbulence. There's a lot of, complicated processes in there that's not allowing the storm to effectively pull that up. So that's what's kind of happening. And then as the shear relaxes, that center of the storm, center of circulation, becomes vertically aligned again. It can, do that. And the better it can ventilate, the stronger it's going to become. So when that shear weakens, that's when the storm's going to begin to intensify, which is the forecast for the next couple of days. So I'm going to hop off of this satellite image and go to the National Hurricane Center forecast. You can see the numerous areas of interest that I pointed out on the invisible satellite imagery earlier. And here is Florence. And this is the track, and you can see, it looks pretty ominous for us here in the Carolinas. It's kind of aiming right towards us. Now keep in mind, this is the cone of uncertainty, the center of the storm. This only counts, the cone is forecasting the center of the storm, so the fringe effects or the outside effects can be felt anywhere outside of this cone. And, this dotted region kind of shows outside of 3 days where uncertainty really kind of grows to a level that's, not really reliable to make a forecast out of. So you can see it's still expected to stay a tropical storm. There's that westward track that I was talking about. With it being weaker, it wants to go directly west and not northwest. And it's going to be battling that shear that I just kind of walked you through tomorrow and through tomorrow night. But then tomorrow night and into Sunday morning, it's going to kind of, that shear is going to relax and the storm's going to be able to kind of pump itself back up and reintensify. National Hurricane Center suggests it being a hurricane by Sunday morning, back into, category 1 or 2 hurricane by Monday. And then the M stands for major hurricane. So it is expected to reintensify into a major hurricane, a very strong tropical cyclone, and it happens to be heading in our direction. And usually you see a lot of storms that want to curve out here and go out to sea. Well, the problem is there's going to be a big ridge building in here, and that's why we're so hot right now. You can kind of, we're under a big area of high pressure of sinking air. Well, that's just kind of going to build. It's breaking down a little bit tomorrow and Sunday to give us a chance of some showers, but back next week it's going to build back up. We're going to be hot and dry here again. And this ridge is going to keep on building and keep on building. And the problem is that lets Florence slip underneath here, and it's already missed its train to go out to sea. So, there's not going to be any mechanism to push it back out. So it's kind of wedged underneath this ridge. And I don't think I have a model image pulled up in this. I will do that in a later video. But the dynamics are just causing it to be pushed right into the southeast of the United States. And we happen to be in that general direction. And, anywhere from Florida up to, New York is at risk. And I'll show you that with the ensembles. Next, it kind of shows, you might have heard that be called spaghetti plots. It's all the possible, scenario. Well, not all of the possible, but it's a computer simulation of several simulations that it runs through, and it shows a huge spread. So, this is the track you need to go by. This is the track that the experts that we talked about that are devoting their time and energy, this is the map you want to look at. This is the official map that includes all of those factors. They're experts doing this. They know what they're doing. They're doing, with all the science and all the resources they can, they're making this, as it is. So this is the forecast track that you need to pay the most attention to, and this will continue to adjust and tweak as we get closer to time. So the next thing I wanted to show you was the ECMWF, European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting Ensemble, the Euro model as it's affectionately called in the GFS. So this is I guess I can actually show you the loop. It's a little more effective with the loop. These are the ensemble forecasts, and each of these lines represent a different simulation of that computer run that I was saying, and it kind of shows you what what's expected. So I'm going to walk through manually here, and the colors just represent intensity. So the warmer the color, the stronger the storm. And if I back it up, all of them are going toward the southeast U.S. There's a couple that still swing out to sea, which would be the best case scenario. We'd still feel very strong rip currents and gusty winds, but then maybe some rainfall on the fringes of the Outer Banks and the coast. But a lot of these take it right into land and take it inland, which is not good. It's the worst case scenario in this case. A strong landfalling hurricane is certainly a major weather event, and that's something that is looking more likely, but it is still so uncertain because so many things can change with the size and shape of the storm. So that's the European, and then we can go back and look at the GFS, and they're a little bit more offshore, but this is still a direct impact. The storm's probably going to swell in size as it goes west. It's just going to kind of get into warmer water and just kind of beef up and intensify, really wrap itself up. And that just lets it, get bigger, so even more people will feel the impacts. And with each model run, less and less of these members, as we call them, members of the ensemble, are showing it curve back out to sea, and a lot more are impacting land. So that is, certainly not a trend we like to see, but there is still uncertainty. These trends could shift back, this way. The past couple of days, they were out here, and then they've shifted west. Well, we're still 6 days out from this. One thing I want to mention is that the primary time, if we were having effects here in North Carolina, would be from Wednesday to Friday. And I say Friday is a cutoff, if the storm slows down or somehow comes inland. The details of that aren't clear yet, but Wednesday to Friday would be the onset of this, specifically on Wednesday, with the tropical storm force winds, affecting the coast. So that's the time frame we're looking at. So less than a week now. Today's Friday, so we have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 5 to 6 to 7 days. Within the week now is when we're seeing the potential impacts from Florence as it's coming. So I wanted to show you that. I don't have any model runs. I just wanted to kind of show what was going on. I have limited time here on my recorder, and I want to keep the videos kind of concise and not ramble on too much. So I want to jump in for the next minute or two for the actual hurricane preparedness. So, you've heard me say it, I'll say it again. Prepare now. It's sunny outside, it's warm, it's hot. Stay inside and prepare. Make an emergency preparedness kit. Do you know your evacuation route? Do you know, flood insurance? If you live in a flood-prone area, do you even know if you live in a flood-prone area? What river are you in closest proximity to? You on your way to work, you on your way to, family members, does that cross over an area that's prone to flooding? You need to know all these things. And there's several things you can do now while the weather is calm ahead of it, and you prepare. And if the storm does come and it hits, you're prepared. If it doesn't, you're prepared for the next storm or for, the winter season. So it's always a good idea to prepare. And I want to quickly run through, some of these things, gather information, make sure people know what's going on, risk analysis. Make a supplies kit. This is a big thing, and I want to kind of jump into this and then wrap this video up. Excuse me. Building a supplies kit, with water, food, battery-powered flashlight, first aid kit, a whistle. If there's no power, the power outage threat is huge with hurricanes because you have wind, you have rain, you have, everything, and it's constant wind. It's not like a gust of wind, so the likelihood of power loss in these storms is very high. So you need to, prepare for all of these things. And I'll actually make a list, make a little package to post on Facebook and Twitter of kind of outlining some of these things that might be a little more well received in a written manner instead of through a video that some people may not see. So I'll post that. But the main thing here as I kind of wrap up is that this Florence is looking more and more likely to have an impact on the Carolinas, unfortunately, and that means that we need to prepare now and keep an eye on the situation. The track is still uncertain. A great amount of uncertainty remains. Weather is an uncertain science. But it looks increasingly likely that we will see some kind of effects, and at minimum we'll see very strong rip currents. So tomorrow's video is going to focus on the actual dangers of the rip currents, the coastal effects, whether or not Florence comes and pays us a very unwanted visit. So there's a lot of impacts here, and we have to kind of evaluate that. There's a lot to talk about in a limited amount of time, so I'm going to wrap up here. For now, be safe. Stay tuned for posts on Facebook and Twitter, and I will see you in the next video. If you have any questions, feel free to Facebook message me or message me on Twitter. Thanks.